I stared straight ahead, refusing to look up at a wall that loomed above me. Something gripped my stomach like a block of concrete. My hands were sweating, and I could hear my heartbeat ringing in my ears. My body was frozen. I couldn't go on any longer. And it's not that I couldn't physically go on, but mentally, I flat out refused. But I hadn't quite admitted that to myself yet. The thought of losing all of this progress just didn't quite appeal to me. And yet I was stuck in this moment, too scared to go on, but too scared to let go. I was facing this inevitable fall. Now, this might sound a little strange coming from someone who spends a lot of time in the vertical world. As a professional rock climber, I've often found myself roped into walls that are thousands of feet high in places like Yosemite, California, or the Andean Mountains in Peru. I've also been unroped on climbs up to 50 feet high in places like Bishop, California, but also Australia, South Africa, and Brazil. In each one of these places, for each one of these climbs, the goal is always the same, just get to the top. And in climbing across the board, the goal is to get to the top. But there is a slight difference between climbing a wall and climbing, say, a big mountain like Everest. If you're gunning for Everest, you want to try and choose the easiest way possible because no matter which way you choose, it's going to be a long, hard slog. But when you're climbing a wall, climbers tend to choose the hardest way on purpose, even though there's almost certainly an easier way up the back. People are always coming up to us and saying, you know, there's stairs around the corner, right? You can just walk to the top. But despite this, climbers choose the hardest way because, to some degree, we seek out that failure. We know we're going to fall, we expect it, and we know that it's going to be scary, which makes sense, right? A fear of falling is a natural human instinct. But it's also a skill that can be trained and practiced. If you just take a few small falls at first, go into some bigger ones, and learn that when you fall, you'll be okay. But despite knowing this, most climbers, do not practice falling. We're so focused on the top, and since climbing is part of the deal anyways, we'd rather concentrate on the positive of moving upwards versus the negative of falling backwards. We figure we'll just deal with the fall as it happens. But now visualize with me for a second. Close your eyes and imagine you're holding on to something really tight. You've worked hard to get there, but your body is getting tired, and you feel yourself weighed down. And there's a growing anxiety in your chest because you know that fall is coming. And because you know the fall is coming, a fear bubbles up that makes you hold on even tighter. That fear keeps you there for a little bit longer, but it's not enough to keep you going. And when this happens to climbers on the wall, we have strategies to manage this fear. We take a deep breath, relax our body, lower our heart rates, and reconnect our mind to ourselves, and regain enough strength to keep going. But these strategies don't work every single time, and at some point we're going to have to take the fall. And in climbing, and really life in general, there's this idea that progress is linear, and that in order to be successful, you have to keep going up and you have to make it to the top. And when you fall, you fail. So what happens when you're scared of that failure and you avoid it at all costs? I found myself thinking about all of this, a little subconsciously maybe, as I stared at my own wall, the one that was so big I couldn't bring myself to look up at it. All I could do was look straight ahead at the features in front of me, the dimples of concrete painted over in white. This big, scary wall was my dorm room at the University of Rhode Island. It was spring of 2010, and I was halfway through freshman year, facing a round of midterms I had not studied for. Notes and textbooks piled up behind me, the stairs I could conceivably use to just walk on out of this situation. But I chose the harder way, and I kept staring at this wall, beating myself up, thinking about what I should be doing in that moment. I should be studying. I should be pushing through. I should be sticking out this whole college thing because that's what you're supposed to do, right? But something didn't feel right to me. I had hit this wall, figuratively and literally, where I could not go on any longer. But dropping out of school was the failure and the fall that I didn't want to face. Now, over the course of my climbing career, I've stood on top of hundreds of climbs and experienced hundreds of successes. And for each one of those successes, I've taken 1,000 falls and 1,000 failures. At this point, I've learned that after I let go and as I'm falling, I position my body in midair so that when I land, I can minimize the force of impact. I also know that even though I'll land farther from where I started, it's better than staying in one place and wasting energy. The minute you let go, even though you're moving backwards, at least you're moving towards another chance to try again. So when I let go of school in 2010, I was scared. I had been holding on to something so tight, something that I wasn't fully committed to. But the minute that I did let go, I positioned my body, I positioned myself in the general direction of something that gave me purpose and made me happy. I tried something different for a while. I went climbing for years and faced the very real fear of falling again and again. And after a while, I returned to school to face that same exact fear in a slightly different context and from a different perspective. Now, this spring of 2021, I will graduate from the University of Colorado here in Boulder. For me, going back to school was not a failure redeemed, but just an opportunity revisited. I wanted to take the lessons I had learned from climbing and apply them in a totally new environment. But you don't need 20 years of climbing experience to figure out how to fall. Everyone has the ability to let go and try again. It might feel a little uncomfortable at first, which is fine. Now is the perfect time to practice. So I challenge you to think of something you've been holding on to, something that's weighing you down, maybe a decision that gives you a little bit of anxiety in your chest when you think about it. I ask you to take a deep breath, relax your body, and imagine what it might be like to let go and take that fall, to jump into it even. Trust yourself to move in whatever direction that may be, because wherever you land, you can always look up and try again.